Live everywhere.
Daily Co's Radio on netrootsradio.com presents
David Walton. Kagro in the Morning Show. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? Wednesday, May 3rd, 2017. That's the date today. My part of the show is done. Greg Dworkin will be here any second, immediately followed by Joan McCarter. And good. I love these days off that I have on Wednesdays. This is the best thing. And I love that it happens midweek, too, right about the time where I say, I've done 2 shows, and I got 2 more to do after this. The midweek thing, the hump day thing. It's great to have good backup on a day like today and get you through the rest of the week. Plenty to try and cram in today anyway. Wow, lots of news. A lot of discussion all of a sudden of the Civil War, the fake Civil War marker on Donald Trump's Trump National golf course out here in Virginia. I see Bob Brigham has written that one up for Raw Story. You all know about that one already, but well worth repeating. I think makes good context when you're trying to evaluate Donald Trump's ability to interpret history differently than the rest of us. With this Andrew Jackson stuff, if you had any question in your mind, or if anybody convinced you that, well, maybe he really does have a more nuanced view of things than the rest of us do. Maybe he's done some reading about Andrew Jackson, and after all, he did have sort of the kernel of possible truth in his statements the other day. No, he didn't. He doesn't know what he's talking about. He's ahistorical and dedicated to being that way. There's no point. This is the context you need if you think that perhaps he suddenly either became a student of history or always has been a student of history and understood things perhaps a little more deeply about Andrew Jackson than you or I did. The answer is no. He just makes up the history he needs. Don't worry about it. You're not falling behind and anything. Anyway, just thought I would reassure you if that was the case, if you too were seeing lots of discussion about this historical marker. Maybe it's just me and the way I've arranged my echo chamber / Twitter feed, but I thought I'd bring that up in case you saw it too. What else have we got? Well, we always have Bill's morning tweet. Daily Coast Radio is live now with Kagro X. That's me, David Waldman. You can find me on Twitter that way, Kagrox. Do take advantage of that. And by the way, attach the KITM Kagro in the morning hashtag so that your comments stay up nice and long and I can see them and include them in the show. We're live, ready to go, and not even Andrew effing Jackson can prevent it from happening. That's true. We're rolling forward. Boy, he's got a lot to be pissed about today, including that strange Civil War marker for the battle that never took place. Is he pissed because he didn't know about it? Is he pissed because he didn't get a chance to prevent it from happening? Is he pissed because he did prevent it from happening and everybody just thinks, oh, it didn't happen and that's the end of the story? Why don't we acknowledge Andrew Jackson's role in preventing the River of Blood, the battle that supposedly had the Potomac River running red all right around the, maybe the 14th hole of of Trump National. Let's see, is it the 14th hole? I don't know if I can, if I remember that correctly. Let's see. I don't know whether any of the stories even bother telling us about it. But it's reiterating most of the article that we happen to have read some time ago. Well, once again, Kagro in the Morning listeners ahead of the curve on things, and that's always good news. Justice in giving me the frantic hand signals behind the scenes that everything is A-OK and the signal's going out just fine. Yesterday we had some technical difficulties. Never did really identify where that was coming from, but hopefully not much of a disruption. No disruption at all for those of you listening by podcast. Thanks to those of you listening in live for hanging in there with us. But, Justice always likes to make these jokes as he's sending us the thumbs up. I had forgotten about putting this story aside. Maybe we can grab this one. Don't laugh, he says. Don't laugh at the intro that we were playing, or you might go to jail. Have we caught up with this? I know we haven't discussed it on the air, but I keep seeing the headlines that I guess a Code Pink protester is on trial, and all the headlines keep saying that she's on trial for laughing during the Jeff Sessions confirmation hearings, which I assume they decided was disruptive of the hearings. You know, these headlines always sort of, I usually get a little eye roll out of things like that when they say, you know, I'm being persecuted for simply exercising my First Amendment rights. And, you know, okay, that's true at some level, but then you read that the story is, well, you know, I was exercising my First Amendment rights by, I don't know, stripping nude and running into an elementary school. And, okay, that she didn't do that. And really, is there any harm in doing something like that? I don't know. Our next guest, Milo Yiannopoulos, will tell us all about that one and why that's actually beneficial for America. I don't know what she did. My assumption is that, like most Code Pink protesters, she was there to disrupt the proceedings. But generally speaking, escorting people out will do. There's rarely any need for an arrest. Sometimes you got to drag somebody out there kicking and screaming, but it's a well-known factor already in Washington, D.C., and Code Pink has never hurt anybody in doing any of this stuff. So I don't know. We'll see if we can catch up with that story and see if there's anything more significant going on here that would warrant actually going to trial than simply having laughed. I did have to see that I guess the cop who made the arrest might never have made an arrest before. That sounded like a somewhat interesting detail, although, you know, generally speaking, growing up, you have some idea if you want to be a cop of what you would arrest people for, and that doesn't seem to be one of those items on the list. I don't know. I'll see if I can grab a story about that one, just for some quick and handy analysis. What do we have in pocket, and what do we have? I guess I should take a look at what Greg's going to bring us, although I always like to be surprised. I'll leave it that way, and we'll see whether we either grabbed any of the same stories or what the differences are. Carter Page is apparently back in the news. The Daily Beast has a piece on him that's going to have some mobster leg breakers out there looking to recover their boss's money, I guess. Carter Page's news story is, hey, I didn't have anything to do with Donald Trump. I don't know who the guy is. I certainly never briefed him. I wasn't even barely involved in the campaign, which I guess it should be noted is what the Donald Trump campaign originally said about Carter Page, too. We're just having a hard time believing it. Probably because Carter Page invested so much time in making sure everybody knew how important he really was in the Trump campaign. Except we don't know. I mean, they're all liars, so I don't know. It's hard to sort out the lies. We'll see. Bill is asking, have I seen anything about the latest whip count in the House regarding Trump Care 3.0? I think we're on 3.1 right now. This could be 3.2 this morning. Last night he heard that they had 21 no's, and that was around the number that they, that's the critical number. I think was something like 22 or so would be too few to guarantee passage should they bring this thing to the floor. I haven't heard anything new. I grabbed another article this morning that I think will help clear it up, and I'm hoping that we can also rely on Joan to help us with that one. But it sounds like they have a 3.1 or even a 3.2 version ready to go. There are changes happening to the bill informally, even as we speak, to try to shore things up. And I don't know. We were supposed to get a vote like today, I thought, and I think it looks like this week will go like last week. They'll push it back, and then the question is, will we break for the weekend without voting and just say we'll come back next week or not? We'll try and round up those stories. Maybe Greg's got some information about that as well. Let's ask him. Greg?
Hi.
Hi. How you doing?
Okay, a little late this morning. I was trying to actually track down some of that stuff. So Fred Upton,
great,
who is a holdout and said no, then introduced amendment this morning. And the Axios piece I have there, I think has the best story on that. The problem is that Paul Ryan was lying about the pre-existing conditions, saying it's verified that this fixes the problem. Of course, it doesn't.
Right.
The new Affordable Health Care Act allows for pre-existing conditions, but allows individual states to waiver out of it, and therefore you have to wind up getting priced out of the market because they can charge whatever they want.
But you are free to have that happen to you.
You're free to move to another state that doesn't cover you.
True also.
So Upton was unhappy with this. So in one last-ditch effort, he offers an amendment, which is a fund, to pay the penalty for not being previously insured for those who get priced out from the market based on health status. In other words, what that means is that insurance companies are only allowed to charge you more for having a pre-existing condition if you drop your current insurance, are uninsured, and then go back and try to buy more.
Okay.
If you stay on whatever you have, they can't raise your rates. But if you drop out and then try to go back in a day later, you're screwed. Now they can charge you like 500 times more than what they did.
What about if you just change insurance companies?
Well, if it's a new setup, then they can charge you whatever they want, according to this bill.
Okay,
so,
free market.
In order to try to get around that, Upton is offering a fund to pay the penalty for not being previously insured. That is to say, if you have that gap, then the feds will cover it for you. Now, nobody's talked to the Freedom Caucus to find out if that's okay with them. Sounds like not.
Right.
And the amount of money they're talking about is something like $8 billion. And that may sound like a lot of money, but it may not be close to what you actually need to do something like this.
Oh. No one's calculated. No one knows.
Nobody knows. And the CBO doesn't know because they haven't had a chance to look at it because they keep changing the bill. So the idea that you would, in the last minute, change the bill and then all of a sudden start rounding up people to vote for it when they haven't even seen what the amendment is, let alone talk to their own constituents to see whether or not people are happy with this. The idea is, if you don't get it done by tomorrow, isn't there another recess?
Good question. I don't know.
I thought they were on recess next week.
It may be. This is about time for them to hit the road and have another recess. I haven't checked.
Yeah, I mean, they work 3 days. Why the heck should they stay longer?
Well,
so I thought if it wasn't done by tomorrow, the vote was supposed to be today, and it's not going to be today. But if it's not tomorrow, I think they failed.
Okay. Well, I'm all right with them failing. And there is talk now open talk among the members of Congress, the Republican conference, that if there's another failure to get a vote, they're just pretty much ready to scrap it and either start over from the beginning or just give up forever.
Right. In the LA Times, though, Nancy Pelosi has this fantastic quote. She says, they got a trifecta going. She said they lose if they bring it up and it passes the House and Senate and then the public sees what it is. That's a loser.
Yeah.
They lose if they bring it up in the House and they can't pass it in the Senate because they now walk the plank for nothing.
Right.
And now they're in another losing situation because it doesn't appear they're going to have the votes. It's doggy-do on their shoe, Pelosi said. They can't get away from it.
And you'll want to.
Yeah.
Trust me. My goodness. All right, well,
doggy-do you can say on the radio.
Yeah, you can get away with that.
You'll have to remember that for next time.
Okay. Oh, do. Let's see.
Anyway, so whether or not it's going to pass or not is still up in the air. Basically, they don't have the votes. And it's hard to commit to, it's not going to happen because the pressure from the White House is enormous on the one hand. And generally, presidents get what they want. But on the other hand, he's completely incompetent. And so that rule doesn't necessarily apply. And you can't go to the leadership and say, what do you guys think? Because they lie. So nobody really knows what's going on. People have their cheat sheets. There's at least 20 no's and you need 22 to scuttle a bill. And there's like 30 undecideds. Matt Fuller
yes.
on Twitter is keeping a fantastic list, and he's like one of the best congressional correspondents around. So it's close, but close doesn't matter if you don't have the votes. And I think that there's like 30 people who don't want to vote for it, who won't commit one way or the other. They just don't want to publicly say they don't want to vote for it.
Yes.
So I don't think, because they don't want to be the one who says, my vote is why it didn't work. Nobody wants to be in that situation in the House. There's no such thing as political courage if you're a congressman.
Yes.
Right? Never want to be that last vote.
No, they're rarely interested in holding themselves out that way. I saw that Darrell Issa is telling reporters who ask about his position on the bill that it's none of their business. I find that rather unique and interesting. There's probably more than just him saying that, but
there is. I think it was Don Young from Alaska, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong.
Well, he
could have gotten the wrong guy. He said something along the lines of, "I'm not sure if I'm uncommitted."
I don't stand by anything. I'm not sure if I'm uncommitted.
So I mean, I was joking with Matt Fuller. I said, how do you put that Dave Hopkins, one of the political scientists, how do you put that guy onto a spreadsheet? What column does he go under? He doesn't even know whether or not he's uncommitted.
Right.
You got to make a
Governor
separate
Andrew
column
Jackson.
for him.
He's pissed.
We have yays, we have nays, we have uncommitted,
I don't know.
and we have Don Young.
Right. His Scottish court, what was it?
Yeah, no low contender, whatever, you know.
By the way, Stephen Dennis, who writes for Bloomberg.
Yeah, another good one.
Yes.
What does he say?
Well, I just he's estimating that we're at least at Trump Care 3.1 right now. I guess enough things are being floated as changes for him to change the version number. And some of the really weird.
But floating change means that people can't, commit the vote right away. They have to understand what the changes are.
Or not.
That pushes it back, and that spoils the deadline.
It's none of our business, or something like that. Yeah, it could. And yes, the House is on recess next week. The Senate is staying for whatever reason to do nothing.
Yeah, but it's the House that's the issue here.
They're the ones that are supposed to go first in this, and they'll want to be out of here tomorrow by about 4:00, typically, if they can.
Right.
Well, we'll see. They might hang out to Friday if they think they can have a vote. But some question whether they would wait until Friday only to either not have a vote or to have that vote fail. So if they can't get there, I would think if they don't have it solid by tomorrow noon, they'll just leave.
This is interesting in the sense that you would think, and you saw the last time around, somebody like Paul Ryan would say, if you don't have the votes, we're not bringing it to the floor. Right. And by the way, it's not coming to the floor today, so that tells you don't have the votes.
Yeah.
But Donald Trump wants a vote. It's like he didn't even care whether they win or lose. He just wants it voted on.
Yep.
Partly because I think he doesn't really understand how the government works.
Yes, I think that is unfortunately true.
But he thinks he can browbeat people. If there's a vote tomorrow, I can line him up and persuade him. And what happens if it actually goes to a vote? Then you have to have people on record where there's something to run against them with commercials like Jimmy Kimmel the next time they run. And so what if it loses? I mean, what if it goes to a vote and loses as opposed to you couldn't put it on the floor because it doesn't have the votes? The political implications of that is Trump is useless, that he's completely ineffective, and who cares what he wants?
Well, that was the political implication of pretty much all day yesterday, and the Rush Limbaugh show, apparently. He spent the day complaining about the spending bill that was coming forward and the caving on everything, and what's the point of voting Republican if this is what happens? I think he was asking, did he have Mike Pence on?
I don't know, rhetorical question?
Yeah. It doesn't really matter who was there. But yeah, they're starting to get angry, they're continuing to be angry, which is fine by me.
Well, that's what they do. It's an outrage machine.
Yes. That's the one that's well oiled.
Right.
That's what he meant. Okay. Now we know. And you're right. Okay.
Anyways, that's really the big news. And so trying to figure out exactly what's going on here. It's interesting because I think there was a quote from Mark Sanford.
Yes.
Which says something along the lines of, at some point in time, the Republican Party is going to have to deal with the fact that this whole thing was kind of a mirage. This whole repeal thing. And one of the reporters, I think it was Jake Sherman, following this, saying, this is amazing. Mark Sanford is saying that the last 7 years were like completely bogus. Yeah. And I'm thinking to myself, the only amazing thing is that you jerks didn't just say that because everybody knew it.
Right.
Why didn't you write it?
Well, Mark Sanford, they won't quote him. Or pin it on him. He said it, we'll quote it, but that doesn't represent the majority of
They never had a plan to replace because they never made one. This has been evident for years. And the fact that Republican constituents are helped by this is also evident. And the fact that they can't get the votes to do this is evident. And the fact that they haven't been able to do anything for years is evident. And now all of a sudden they're coming to the conclusion that, you know what, some Republicans apparently have known this for a long time. I'm shocked. Look at my shock face on the radio.
Yes. The most disturbing part about that is Hillary Clinton will not shut up about it.
I've got a story about that one too.
Yeah, she's really pissing me off answering questions. And
she just won't go away,
I know.
Somebody asked her about the election and she answered it.
Why did they ask her?
Dave Weigel had this really good piece.
Yes.
This is the title. This one Clinton quote shows why her supporters hate the media. and I was getting into it with Glenn Thresh this morning as well. It was hardly the headline from Hillary Clinton's interview with Christine Amanpour. It came near the end of a 35-minute session, but one comment from the 2016 Democratic nominee perfectly illustrated why liberals remain furious at how the campaign was covered. In a riff on how to create jobs, Clinton made the fairly ordinary point that if you don't have access to high-speed affordable broadband, which large parts of America do not, large employers will overlook your town. She said, so if you drive around in some of the places that beat the heck out of me, you can't get cell coverage for miles. And even in town, so President was in Harrisburg. I was in Harrisburg during the campaign. I met with people afterwards. One of the things they said to me is there are places in central Pennsylvania where we don't have access to affordable, high-speed internet, which is a fairly innocuous comment. Rural Republicans, rural politicians often push to get infrastructure built out there. Don't forget us. Time Magazine's Phil Elliott tweeted a quick summary of the quote. You can't get cell coverage from mile, Clinton says, of the places that voted against her.
Yes.
And the floodgates open from a CNN reporter expressing some befuddlement as to why Clinton was talking about a state that broke against her. Clinton now talking about Pennsylvania, said Zach Wolf. Rural cell service. Like, why didn't you talk about it then? It was part of her entire platform, and she did talk about it. You didn't cover it because you weren't interested. From a regional national Republican senatorial committee director asking whether Clinton was making excuses for her loss, Clinton Sofer, is Hillary Clinton adding cell coverage to list the reasons, not including myself, why I lost list?
Yeah, exactly. That's what was happening. And so was Andrew Jackson.
Right. And another one from a Silicon Valley startup. This anti-rural snootiness doesn't help Dems. I'm from deep red, no cell coverage, Missouri. Clinton fans there, my folks, wouldn't appreciate. So Jess McCaughan. McCuan.
Well, they couldn't get the whole quote because of the cell service problem.
So, Dave Weigel writes, here's the point. Elliott's tweet fed a quick afternoon round of mockery for Clinton, who, as ever, had been out of touch. But anybody who's covered politics, certainly anybody who's done a reporting trip to rural West Virginia, Iowa, New Hampshire, could recognize what Clinton was talking about. She campaigned on a $250 billion infrastructure plan, which in the unappealing campaign speak of her news release included giving all American households access to world-class broadband and creating connected smart cities with infrastructure that's part of tomorrow's Internet of Things. Now, the press corps of 2016 was under no obligation to regurgitate campaign news releases, but it's 2017. A president who was opaque about his policy plans during the campaign is now being asked to fund rural broadband projects. And this is exactly the sort of issue policy reporters are familiar with. He gives a link. And it's the sort of issue you typically see litigated during a campaign. Candidate X has a plan for wiring rural America. Candidate Y has this plan. That's how the eventual Trump float of a child care plan was covered. But narrative can overwhelm that, and the firmly established narrative of Clinton and Trump is that she couldn't connect to rural voters. He was a blue-collar billionaire who made surprising emotional connections. I think it's been like 15 minutes, and I haven't seen an interview from a red state Trump voter yet, so I'm like having withdrawal.
Oh, yeah, poor you.
Trump may be the first president whose plunge to 40% approval was marked by stories about the voters who still loved him. And Clinton may be the only politician who could talk about the need for rural broadband, at this point an almost banal priority of rural politicians, and be accused of snobbery.
Yes.
That's the article, and he's absolutely right, and it's infuriating, and that's one of the reasons why Times reporters who cover this can wind up infuriating us. And that's exactly what happened this morning. So she has this entire interview. By the way, just in passing, I came across the Mark Sanford quote. It's from a tweet from Alexander Jaffe. Mark Sanford was not optimistic on O-Care repeal. He tells me that full repeal was, in essence, a pipe dream from the very start. I'll just throw that quote in there on the list so Scott Anderson can do a nice summary of the show later. And so that's part of it. What I'm looking for here is my back and forth with Glenn Thresh from the New York Times, which was a whole thing here in regard to, it's in my notifications, and that's why I
okay. You sure it wasn't something you saw on Saturday Night Live?
You never know. But it looked and sounded like Glenn. And he had made a list of some of the things that struck him during the 35-minute discussion, which actually was quite interesting. It's really interesting hearing an intelligent person talk about politics. You know, so
we should try that.
What's that?
We should try that.
Yeah, we should.
Anybody got any suggestions?
So we had so much discussion this morning. I'm just trying to find the exact spot here. It's worth taking the time to do that.
Well, I should hope so.
We had a nice one from, let's see. Hillary Clinton made one thing very clear today, said Chris Eliza. She thinks the election was taken from her.
Yes.
And I said, well, she's right.
Yeah.
You know, because basically the Wiki Comey thing, one of the big things that came out of that is that she made a big deal of saying that it was a big deal. And you know what? It was. So that part of it makes perfect sense. There we go.
I feel like a lot of these guys have insisted to me that nuance was important. And maybe that was why we had to subscribe to their papers or whatever.
The New York Times had a huge quarter. They had something like 300,000 largest ever subscribers sign up in the first quarter. Of course, Brett Stevens joined in the second quarter. So we'll see how many people dropped it.
Yeah, I feel bad. I mean, I made a big deal out of saying, I should finally subscribe. And now I have people saying, now you need to unsubscribe because of Brett Stevens. And I'm not sure how to deal with that.
They just dump on them, but you don't have to unsubscribe.
Yes.
You have to not read them like you don't read David Brooks.
That's true. I mean, that's one. So I feel like a special case on this.
Yeah.
Just because I borrow so much of their other writing is the basis of the show so often. I feel like it's cheating to not pay them for it.
Right. You have that. So did I miss David Brooks' family value guy?
Getting married?
To somebody half his age who was working with him on his book?
I didn't know that she was half his age, but I figured she probably was, given the job that she had taken. Anyway. All I wanted to know was whether there was a salad bar at their reception.
It doesn't matter. I don't really care what people do with their private lives. It's just when they're hypocrites about it, it annoys me.
All right. Well,
here's Glenn Thrush from the New York Times. After the talk that Hillary gave, and remember, she's answering specific questions.
Yes, please tell us
that Christine Amanpour asked her. So Hillary takeaways, he tweets. 1, loathes Trump. 2, blames Comey Putin. 3, the real Hillary is funny, hard-edged, and unguarded. 4, blames everybody but self. And I wrote him and said, well, you got 3 out of 4. You got the 4th wrong. And he said to me, so explain, what did I get wrong? Well, one of the direct quotes she made during her talk was, and this is a direct quote, did I make mistakes? Oh my God, yes. Yeah. So I don't understand how you could say she blames everybody but self when she said, I made mistakes.
And invokes God in doing it.
And Thrush's answer was, well, but she didn't lay out exactly what those mistakes were.
Did anybody ask?
No. And so he laid out questions he would have asked if he were in that situation, and that's fine and well and good. And I said to him, that's fine and well and good. Those are good questions, but that's not the question she was asked. She answered the question. It makes your number 4 wrong. You wrote that because you just like to write stuff like that.
Yes. Well, he does.
Now that all fits in with the Dave Weigel piece here. And then you have all this stuff on the oh my God, why doesn't she go away? She keeps talking about the election. She keeps talking about the election because somebody asked her. It's the first big interview she had since the election. Whereas Trump talks about it every single day and nobody asks him.
When he's not asked the question. Yeah, so I don't know why you're harping on being asked the question.
He makes maps and he gives them to the Chinese premier.
Right. Again, now, so Greg, why harp on whether or not she was asked the question? Trump says it whether he's asked the question or not. So, does that
And he's president, so why don't we just look at him?
Well, we could do that.
And so I'm still waiting for why don't we go interview Hillary voters and see what they think. So it was a very nice piece by Dave Weigel that at least he brought that up and discussed it. And I think that that's important. Here's another one that I think that we should cover on the show. This is by Ryan J. Riley from HuffPost. HuffPost is now renamed, by the way. It's not Huffington Post anymore. She's gone. It's just HuffPost.
Oh, yeah.
That's what I've always called it, but that's what they call it now.
Yeah, that's weird. Well, okay.
It's actually in their, the big title there.
I think the Huff was the part that was important. The Ington thing could be anybody. They should have just kept it the Ington Post.
Yeah, exactly. So here's the story. Department of Justice lawyers insist laughing at their boss, Jeff Sessions, can be a criminal offense. Do you know about this one?
I do, and I didn't have that story handy, and I was looking for it. So, yes, let's talk about that one. What happened?
Laughter is enough to merit a criminal charge for disrupting Congress, government lawyer claims. Laughing at the claim that during a congressional hearing that Attorney General Jeff Sessions treats all Americans equally is, in and of itself, enough to merit a criminal charge.
Yeah.
A Justice Department lawyer argued before a D.C. jury on Tuesday. David Steyer, a Justice Department lawyer, made the claim in closing arguments in a 2-day trial of Desiree Farouz, a 61-year-old activist associated with Code Pink. She was arrested in January when she laughed during Sessions' confirmation hearing after another senator claimed Sessions had a long record of treating all Americans equally.
Wow.
Farouz is on trial alongside Teague Barry and Lenny Bianchi, who dressed as KKK members and pretended to support Sessions during the hearing.
Okay, that's annoying.
Right? Farouz was,
Good.
I don't like Code Pink, but, free speech and all of
Yeah.
that. Farouz was taken into custody by a rookie Capitol Police officer who had never made an arrest before and was covering her first congressional hearing. Steyer also told the men and women deciding the case in the D.C. Superior Court that this was his first jury trial. The U.S. Attorney's Office for the District of Columbia prosecutes both local and federal cases, so Superior Court is a good place for DOJ attorneys from various divisions to get trial experience, as very few federal cases ultimately go to trial. Steyer said the case again, and that may be the most interesting piece in the whole, story.
It's a bit of a weird, all right. Yes.
Steyer said the case against the defendants was about them making a scene and intentionally taking steps to bring attention to themselves. He labeled them professional protesters and said Farouz's loud bursts of laughter disrupted Congress, even though the proceedings continued without interruption until the Capitol Police forcibly removed her from the room. So Capitol Police were the ones that made the, disruption. Later, in a rebuttal to the defense, Department of Justice lawyer Jason Covert claimed Farouz was given multiple warnings before her scoff.
Oh no, warnings.
Yeah, don't scoff.
She persisted.
So, yeah, she did. So that's kind of weird. So the Farouz attorney, Samuel Bogash, said his client's laughter was totally spontaneous and unintentional. You could barely hear the laugh on the C-SPAN tape. And they actually have a tape there. It looks like it was Richard Shelby who was claiming that
He hates laughter.
that Jeff Sessions was fair to everybody. Bogash said that Farouz was struck by Shelby's claim. The U.S. Capitol Police, Bogash said, gave his client the old United Airlines routine and removed her from the room. That's actually pretty funny. I have to call that.
It wasn't even their routine yet.
Oh, the old United Airline, the old United routine. Hey, get rid of him. Get him out of here.
Yeah, I know someone else who did that, and he's being sued for it.
Yeah. It's like the old shows where you push a button and the door opens below you and you fall into the pit. It's the old United routine. Farouz simply acted the way anyone would have if they were yanked out of their chair, he said. She's here because she laughed. I can't say it enough. She is here because she laughed.
Yeah,
So
usually there's more to it in those stories, and it doesn't really seem to be the case except for really touchy cops and witnesses who, were just dour people. They say laughter is the best medicine, and we have the best medicine in the world in this country. And
well, that's why we're debating healthcare.
Yeah.
It really this whole thing should have been part of the healthcare debate. It should have been an amendment offered by Richard Shelby.
Yeah, right. Arrest her. I'm self-medicating.
Laughter is the best medicine, but it's not,
Just
that's
not here.
she's doing it in the socialized way. She's not charging for it. We got
The Office of the Attending Physician gave me this joke. All right. Well, that's
unusual.
unusual.
I got one here to follow up on Monday's show.
Ah.
Why was there the Civil War? Here's your answer.
Oh, it's here? Where?
Yeah. By James Lowen.
Oh, Joel James. Is this an angry answer or?
No. He's a historian. Actually, has a very good one.
Real answer.
Right? I have a big, the one with one of those blurbs there. Opinion. Why was there the Civil War? Here's your answer. It's right there on your list.
Okay. Where was this published?
Washington Post. Okay. By James Lowen, emeritus professor of sociology at the University of Vermont.
Vermont.
Is the author of Lies My Teacher Told Me.
Oh.
And the Confederate and the Neo-Confederate Reader. That's another one of his books.
Oh. There is an interesting, there's like a neo-Confederate / secessionist movement in rural Vermont. I don't know where they think they're going to go, but Canada, I guess. But.
Yeah. So Trump's comment about Andrew Jackson, was in the service of his wider discussion of the Civil War. People don't ask that question, he said in an interview with the Washington Examiner. And by the way, I didn't mention, you had asked on the air, I don't know if you ever got your question, who is Selena Zito?
Oh, yes. I did find out.
Selena Zito used to work at one of the Pittsburgh papers.
Oh.
And she was the original Chris Arnott who would go to places in rural Pennsylvania because she was based in Pittsburgh. And she would talk to white Trump voters. And she started talking early on in the election that there's a lot of odd support here for Trump from former Democrats in the Harrisburg area and in the T and in the Pennsylvania part of Pennsylvania here. You guys should be aware of, because these are former Democrats and some of these are Obama voters and they're all voting for Trump. I'm telling you. So she did a good job of going out and talking to people before the election.
Well done.
And that's where she's most well known. And then, of course, the paper fired her, and now she works for the D.C. Washington Examiner.
Why did they?
But I know her. That's who she is. I think they were just laying off reporters.
Oh, okay. Well, maybe that's why. Oh, now she's economically anxious, and that's why she works for the Washington Examiner.
Well, she got a job. Anyway, that's who she is, so I know her name. And she's definitely writes from. She's a straight journalist who writes from the opinion of center-right and looks for conservative points of view. And so for her to interview Trump is not surprising. He would have picked a friendly voice. That's why I'm bringing this story up.
Okay, I gotcha.
So anyway, Trump's comment about Jackson was in the service of his wider discussion of the Civil War. And why was there a Civil War? It's an important question, says this author.
Yes.
We can only wonder what the president would have said had his interview asked, and what do you think?
Yes, well, what is this, a psychiatric exam or an... Okay, well...
But this is where he gets to the point here. All too many Americans reply vaguely states' rights, even though Southern leaders, as they left the Union, made clear they oppose states' rights, and even named the states and rights that offended them. Americans are vague because their textbooks are vague. Publishers don't want to offend white school boards in Dixie, which I think is an important point to make. And for those of you that don't know, places, especially Texas, which are huge and buy a lot of books.
Yes.
Very much influence the book publishing industry when it comes to schools, because the school boards won't accept, a lot of what you would normally think of as like standard stuff.
Right. The reality.
Well, they have alternative facts.
Right.
And I think the Civil War and the whole discussion of the Civil War might have been the first set of alternative facts.
Yeah, I could believe that. That's interesting. This part I didn't know, right? That Southern leaders, as they left the Union, made it clear that they opposed states' rights? How really?
Yeah. Trump's conclusion about Jackson places him in a camp of 1930s historians who called it a needless war. But that was the nadir of race relations. Earlier, everybody knew better. In 1858, William Seward, a Republican senator from New York, gave a famous speech titled The Irrepressible Conflict, referring to the struggle between slave labor and voluntary labor. When Mississippi seceded, it emphasized the same point. Our position is thoroughly identified with the institution of slavery, the greatest material interest in the world.
Well,
so simply to recognize the material interest renders improbable the needless war notion. Mississippi was right. Slavery was the greatest material interest in the U.S., if not the world. Slaves made up an investment greater than all the manufacturing companies and railroads in the nation. Never has an elite given up a stake voluntarily. The North went to war to hold the nation together, not to emancipate anybody, but the Civil War did end slavery. So when might that have happened otherwise? He writes, today, when slavery has no state sanction anywhere, it seems obvious that the institution could not have survived to the 21st century, but if the South had prevailed, cotton would have resumed its role as the largest and most important portions of the commerce of the earth. Coal, pa. It was all about cotton. To quote Mississippi's secession document, they didn't do the pa. I did.
Oh.
I like that. It's a nice expression. The Confederacy might have replaced France as the colonial ruler in Mexico and Spain and Cuba. Eyeing such a strong economic and military model, Brazil might not have abandoned slavery. And there's one more layer on the onion. The South didn't quite secede for slavery, but for slavery as the mechanism to ensure white supremacy. On many occasions, its leaders made this clear. Trying to persuade fellow Texans to secede, John Marshall wrote in his Austin State Gazette in 1861, it's essential to the honor and safety of every poor white man to keep the Negro in his present state of subordination and discipline. That's pretty clear.
Yeah, that's your Southern strategy written when the Southern strategy was war.
Written, right, by Southerners.
Holy cow.
In 1863, William Thompson, founder of the Savannah Morning News, proposed a new, mostly white national flag for the Confederacy, as a people were fighting to maintain the heaven-ordained supremacy of the white man over the inferior or colored race. A white flag would thus be emblematical of our cause.
Wow.
And of course, I've seen that written by many people, that the final Confederacy battle flag was entirely white.
And so it did.
And so it did. And so it happened. Mathematics.
Wow. Well, that's pretty explicit stuff, and probably,
wait, the government agreed and adopted his flag.
Yeah.
Late in the war, trying to persuade Confederates to persevere, the Richmond Daily Inquirer asked, what are we fighting for? We're fighting for the idea of race. Now, some Trump partisans, he writes, are clearly still fighting for that idea. Unfortunately, the Civil War settled only the issue of slavery, not white supremacy. Getting a civil war wrong was part of the program of white supremacy during the race relations nadir. Today, getting it right isn't just Trump's responsibility. It's all of ours. I thought it was a great column. And that's why I wanted to bring it back, even though you had finished up with the topic on Monday.
I'm moving to Vermont at this point. That was a fantastic column. Well put. There's no chance that Trump is going to fulfill his responsibility to get that right. He won't even get the facts of whether there were battles on his golf courses right. But, wow, that's a bit on the nose for the morning. Yeah, a great point that the war didn't. The war may have settled slavery, but it didn't settle the actual underlying problem. And I hear it said all the time, and I guess I sort of assumed, well, certainly I'm sure there was offensive writing about it at the time that, even at the time was considered radical in its insistence on white supremacy. But it always felt like, I've never made a huge study of the literature of the time, but they're pretty explicit about it.
They have. I mean, I don't have it at my fingertips, but I've seen multiple situations where they clearly said, no, this is what we're doing, and this is why we're doing it. And it's not ambiguous.
And I've seen people throw, you know what, I see it in discussion on Twitter when people try to deny that slavery was the cause of the war, and then people produce all sorts of great original documents
saying that it
was. But boy, this really puts an even better point on it. Like that slavery was almost incidental to the real reason that they were seceding. It's slavery. It's great.
It's a chicken and egg thing. It's really kind of hard at that particular point to say which is which.
Yeah,
because so much economics was wrapped up with slavery that you had to justify it, and the justification was white supremacy.
Yeah, I don't. We don't see very much of that. I guess it's just too difficult to discuss in anything but an academic setting.
School boards don't want you to teach that.
Man, well, you know what? They've put it at the forefront, the Trump people have, not by faking their understanding of the Civil War so much. That's sort of a byproduct of it. But how many times do we have to be confronted with the fact that someone extraordinarily important to the inner circle in the White House has all their chips on white supremacy? Okay, it's almost hard to believe, but you have to get hammered with it over and over, and then it's rather neatly wrapped up by a history professor, in the strange happenstance, and I guess it's not happenstance since it appears he was coached by Bannon, that all of a sudden Donald Trump, of all people, has an abiding historical interest in Andrew Jackson.
Of all people, and why? Proud slave owner.
Yeah, and he could have gotten away with that even without connecting him to the Civil War even. Probably people would have said, weird but understandable, and then people who had a better understanding of Andrew Jackson would have said,
Can you imagine him turning to Elizabeth Warren and saying, and take that, Pocahontas, Andrew Jackson is my favorite president?
Yeah, well, that'll go over big too. I mean, wow. Well, this is
he capable of doing that? Is that a slur? I mean, look, Trump keeps calling her that, and it's incredibly offensive.
Yeah.
And, Andrew Jackson is his, favorite president. And I'm saying, is this a coincidence? I think not.
No, it can't be. I was talking about it yesterday. Andrew Jackson is no one's favorite president except as a dog whistle. He just doesn't enter into the pantheon that way. As dumb as it is for people to say that their favorite president is Ronald Reagan, I understand it. It's just sort of something that
my
falls
favorite
out of your
president
mouth.
was James K. Polk, and I really am into Millard Fillmore. And,
now, if
Andrew Johnson is just
Polk, I'd understand.
Come on, guys.
Yes.
You think they're all better than Abraham Lincoln?
People don't know Abraham Lincoln was a Republican.
Yeah, right.
I don't know if you know that people don't know that. By the way, Arliss
I didn't know
Bunny,
that people don't know that because I knew that.
Yeah. Oh, well, so you're living in a bubble.
Yeah, well.
An educated
So
bubble.
let me
Arliss
just
Bunny,
change subjects again
don't do it
because
yet.
this is the show and we can.
Hold on. I just wanted to throw this in. Did you see this Arliss Bunny tweet here? Fun fact, Southern cotton dominance wouldn't have lasted very long. California produces more cotton than all of the South combined. Wow. I don't know if that was... I didn't know that.
Well,
they're thinking of seceding
kind of
too.
stuff,
This is terrible. The cotton hates America. What's going on here?
Right.
All right. Well, I'll let you interrupt.
And then, cotton and coal could have, fought it out for who's really king.
Yes. That's true. And that was the metaphor used for it. And it's black and white too. How terrible.
Well, yeah, there you go. So, civil rights groups are ready to sue Trump if he signs a broad religious freedom order. That's what's coming down the pike here. We will fight this with everything we have. I'm assuming this is going to be tomorrow. This is by Dominic Holden from BuzzFeed News, and it's about the next executive order that comes. Two prominent civil rights groups told BuzzFeed News on Tuesday they will immediately sue the Trump administration if the president signs a broad executive order on religious freedom that targets LGBT people for discrimination. I think this is a Mike Pence special.
Yes.
Rumors have circulated this week that Trump will sign an order on Thursday, that would be tomorrow. Politico, citing two senior administration officials, reported this is still the plan, that protects those with a religious objection to same-sex marriage, transgender people, and reproductive choices. A draft order with that language had circulated in January and February, but the White House still hadn't released a final draft. But depending upon how the order is worded, legal groups say they're prepared to try blocking it in federal courts on constitutional grounds, thereby hoping to hand Trump another high-profile defeat like those that have faced so far with his travel bans.
They need to start doing interviews with Trump and Bannon and Miller on this thing so that they can say something to defeat it.
Lambda Legal Senior Counsel Camilla Taylor said, we're prepared to sue in a very short time frame if the executive order closely resembles the leaked drafts. And James Essex, director of the ACLU's Lesbian, Gay, Bisexual, Transgender, and HIV Project, added in an interview, we're ready to sue if they do something that authorizes discrimination. If Trump signs an order like the one we saw a couple months ago, it would violate the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment and the Establishment Clause of the First Amendment. But, my personal opinion is I don't know why you're wasting time talking about something as trivial as the Civil War or something as obscure as, religious discrimination protections and lack of same, because what we really ought to be talking about is the fact that Hillary Clinton has opinions.
Yes. And a war was fought about that. And,
right? We keep telling her to shut up and go away, and she doesn't.
That's why we invaded.
Nonetheless, she persisted. So, what happens now? The other interesting thing is that she branded herself as part of the resistance.
Yes.
That was kind of fun.
That was kind of fun. And although I had a feeling it would engender some eye rolling as well. But,
let it.
But, who cares?
Let people be aware it's real and there's people from all over the spectrum doing it.
Yes, that's
Let them
true.
roll their eyes.
And
So
by
what?
the way,
Who cares?
the more
She's taken
successful
worse.
resistances will, in fact, they're usually big tent resistances, the ones that succeed.
Yeah, and if the big tent would fold at the first sign of eye rolling, what kind of a resistance is it anyway?
That's true. Otherwise, that's pretty easy to defeat as well.
Mm-hmm.
Huh.
All right, so before I go, I'm just going to take a look at the pundit roundup I put up this morning and see if there's anything of interest here. I had this graphic at the very top. I don't know if you have it handy, so I'll make it handy for you. I'll just add at the very, very bottom of our Skype list. David and I talk to each other by Skype while we talk on the radio, so he can see the visuals that I'm referring to. Okay. And I put together just the headlines from the New York Times and the Washington Post in the last day or so about healthcare here. Let me just read them.
All right.
These are just the headlines.
Okay.
Opposition to key Republican deals blow to health bill. They're referring to Fred Upton. Trump says the government needs a good shutdown.
Not the bad kind.
Not the bad kind, but a good kind. I don't know if you wanted to comment
Andrew
on that one.
Jackson's so angry about the bad ones.
Trump said there needed to be a confrontation over federal spending and seemed to call for scrapping the Senate's filibuster rule, which Republican senators weren't keen on. The basic thing there, the basic theme is that Trump isn't getting what he wants, so he's having a tantrum.
Yes,
and basically, that's how you have to treat him. He's a 10-year-old. I don't understand the rush to normalize him. Oh, he doesn't know what he's doing with North Korea. This could be part of a great plan that finally gets us what we're doing because nobody really knows what's going on, and therefore they're going to bend to his will. Come on, guys. He doesn't know what he's doing, and leave it at that. Don't give these normalizing motives about how this is a great new strategy. It's not planned. It's not thought out. He doesn't have a brain. Come on. Stop. Here's another one. Why the bipartisan budget deal should make Trump worry. The compromise prevented the White House from delivering on the president's priorities and may serve as a blueprint for circumventing him in future. What they didn't say in that little blurb there was that what it really was Republicans and Democrats in a bipartisan way blocking Trump on a lot of what he wanted to do, especially on the wall. Then there's an emotional Jimmy Kimmel discusses newborn son's heart disease. I believe he had tetralogy of Fallot, needed surgery, will need another. Makes passionate healthcare plea. House Republicans continue push for a healthcare bill, even if it goes nowhere in the Senate, because they have to have something. Jimmy Kimmel's heartfelt plea just unmasked Trump's moral bankruptcy by Greg Sargent. The simplified choice for moderate Republicans, Jimmy Kimmel or Donald Trump. That's Philip Bump. Why stand behind a president who is both inconsistent and unpopular? It's a great question, and the one that should be asked. And so, Trump is losing, and he's losing on a lot of different fronts. And I think it's awfully fascinating trying to watch everybody attempt to normalize it. Okay, and then Sarah Cliff from Vox also had a great read on why things stand the way they do from healthcare. As former Republican Senate aide Chris Jacobs presciently described the situation in February, it appears legislators are split into two camps. That's on the Republican side. The repealers and the replacers. Each faction took the part of the Republican slogan they liked, and they clung to it. There is little space for compromise between those two. Either the Republican replacement plan will let insurers charge sick people higher prices, or it won't. And that's the dilemma people are having now, and that's why I want to leave you with this. Statements like these have badly damaged Republican repeal efforts, not just because legislators have opposed the bill. Rather, their statements make clear the stark choice that Republicans face with this bill, either to allow insurers to charge higher premiums or not. That's what the Upton Amendment is about. That's what the McMaster Amendment is about. That's how you're trying to bring those two factions together. It's almost an impossible task because Sarah's right. You're either going to charge people who have illness more or you're not, based on just having an illness. And so you have to decide. It requires, dare I say it, political courage to put your mark on a vote that people will then run against you with because you know they will.
Yes.
And now what happens?
You lose.
You lose. Well, Congress explained for, how bills pass, We like to do the simple explanation. That's as simple as explanation as it gets. The abbreviated how Congress works on healthcare.
Yeah. Yeah, yesterday was a great, it was a big day for drawing those lines, too. If you started the day thinking, wow, how could anybody line themselves up in opposition to Jimmy Kimmel's plea here? And it seemed like it would be a difficult thing to do, even for, say, someone like Mo Brooks, was it? The other day was saying, well, basically, if you have a pre-existing condition, that's an indication of some moral turpitude on your part.
Right.
Which is, as dumb as it is, old man Republicans occasionally do say things like that. And then if you press them on it, they sometimes will acknowledge, sometimes infants are born with heart defects.
Yeah,
sure.
Right.
So okay, I won't be the scumbag who lines up against Jimmy Kimmel on this one. But by the afternoon, there was a queue of Republicans looking to take top spot in being the guy willing to say. And I found a couple, and my short list definitely included Joe Walsh.
Yeah, he was top of the list.
Yeah. There's another guy, Charles Hurt, who is an opinion writer for the Washington Times, who vaulted to the lead. I mean, Joe Walsh basically did the, sorry, not sorry. Sorry, Jimmy Kimmel, we don't have to pay for your kid, which is not surprising since Joe Walsh doesn't pay for his own kids. Everybody, that was like the falling off a log response to that. But thank you, everybody, for coming up with it. But Charles Hurt vaults to the lead by actually writing under the headline of, what was it? The Jimmy Kimmel is an elitist scumbag who needs to shut up. Wow. All right.
Okay, I wonder what he thought of the Clinton
your
interview.
Opinion there, Charles. Hope you don't get any, polonium in your pizza or anything.
Right. Now, I've taken a lot of your time this morning.
No.
Do I have time for one more?
Yeah, I'd say so. I look at these as days off.
This is Jack Schaefer. and he's writing in Politico magazine. Don't always like his writing, but this one was fun.
Okay.
It's called All the President's Mice.
Okay.
Not all the president's men. It's about of mice and men, but this is about all the anonymous mice who are leaking. He says, Palace intrigue is ripping apart the White House. Why doesn't Trump stop it? Rhetorically.
Why doesn't Andrew Jackson?
Yeah. But he's got a great first paragraph.
Okay.
Okay. It's Charles P. Pierce would have been proud to write this. For quality trash talk, bury yourself in an eye-gouging loose ball NFL pileup. Those who don't play pro football? Well, the next best alternative would be eavesdropping on the not-for-attribution quotations White House sources have been dishing to the press about other White House sources over the first 100 days of Baby Donald's presidency. If this were theater, it would be the Grand Guignol. If it were a movie, it would be The Shining, with blood bursting through White House elevator doors. If it were a 911 call, it would be the report of a murder. Politics has always had a unique way of converting allies into foes and transforming marginal disagreements into knife fights, but rarely, in the annals of White House palace intrigue, have all the president's anonymous stabbed more backs or spilled more blood than at Donald Trump's 1600. The ongoing dog-eat-dog and cat-eat-mouse dramatics at Trump's White House would put Machiavelli in stitches. None of the big shots, including Prince Jared Kushner, Steve Bannon, Reince Priebus, and Gary Cohn, can find sanctuary.
Yeah.
And throughout the whole piece, he refers to Prince Jared Kushner.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, as well as
like
Baby
Bannon.
Donald.
Baby Donald, President Bannon, and Prince Jared. That's well put.
Yeah, so very, very nicely done.
Yes. By the way, I overstated the case. Charles Hurt merely calls Jimmy Kimmel an elitist creep, not a scumbag. I'm sorry I got out front on that one.
Well, it was edited out.
Yeah, that was the original.
We know what he meant. In any case, that's my summary for today. Kind of interesting. Little of this, a little of that. As I put it in the pundit roundup, the clown in chief is losing it bigly. And with that, is Joan coming today?
Yes. I state
Say
that
hi.
unequivocally. Okay.
And I will talk to you tomorrow. And thanks so much for listening, folks. This is Greg Dworkin speaking with my friend David Waldman Kagro in the morning. And thanks for listening, folks. It is Wednesday, May 3rd. And if you're listening by podcast or download or wherever you do it, we're very grateful that you do. And thank you to Scott Anderson for putting together the summary every day. And we'll be back tomorrow. We'll do it again, although shorter.
Okay. Sure. I think, like I said, I enjoy these Wednesdays
you get going,
because I get the day off.
Well, you got another hour of the show, and who knows what you're going to say, because you don't and we don't, and we'll just stick around and find out.
Yes.
Take care.
The answer is whatever Jones says.
Yeah, exactly right. Let's talk about the Civil War. The Civil War, the Great Civil War, or the Greatest Civil War?
Yes. Why can't we have more wars that are civil?
Yeah, well, it's the war of northern aggression, depending upon where you read it. I have to say, there's an awful lot of interest in the Civil War. Civil War searches on Twitter and the internet spiked up after this comments. And so, learning a little history, that's not so bad. Go back and read the original documents, folks. It's really a good idea.
You won't believe it. There'll be a lot of people who just think it's somehow fake news when you see how explicit some of this writing really is.
Yep. Alrighty, take care.
Okay. Thanks, Greg. We'll catch up with you again on Thursday, and that counts as our weekend. Just like Congress, you're out of here for the weekend come Thursday morning. Okay, let's see. Wow, I am shocked. I am shocked and appalled by what I've been learning this morning. Let's see if we can catch up on any comments that we need to bring to the fore here. Let's see. What do we got? Yeah, there's a couple here. I know, I guess, were made in passing during our discussions here. Bill noting that Republicans in Congress know that Trump's ratings are historically low. And of course, he would refer to them as ratings, thinking they're Nielsen ratings. 40%. So they know he's pretty toxic. And that will color all of the choices that they make this week, if they're even given the opportunity to make a choice about this health care bill. As I mentioned earlier, Stephen Dennis was commenting on the floor situation in the House. In addition to being up to Trump Care 3.1 at this point, he also had some comments on, I guess, the spending deal, which has been itself very intriguing. I'm going to have to kind of scroll back in his timeline to find this, because he moved pretty quickly from it. And I thought I had put both tweets aside, but let me catch up. So it was 2 hours ago that he mentioned, I think we're now up to AHCA 3.1. Then sort of one more note on healthcare. He says, you never know what it'll take to pass a bill. In 2005, $2 billion for oxygen tank manufacturers were key to passing the biggest deal of the year. And that one doesn't strike me. I don't remember exactly what that deal was about, but he's right in that the strangest things, especially when you need to secure just 1 or 2 votes, the strangest things will come up and find their way into the bill to get the votes to pass it. And remember, of course, that when this kind of horse trading was done in another context, it was horrible and tyrannical and Cornhusker kickbacks and this and that and the other thing, Louisiana Purchase, all of which ended up not actually making it into the final version of the bill, but that didn't stop Scalia from being angry about it. Angrier even than Andrew Jackson, I believe, was about the bill. Yes, he died 150, 160 plus years before the passage of the Affordable Care Act, but he was so angry, he saw it coming, and he would have done anything to prevent it because he was such a populist. Anyway, Stephen Dennis also then, he moved on, I guess about an hour or so, an hour and 10 minutes or so, it appears, intervened before his next tweet in which he says, CR notes, here he's referring it to the spending bill as a continuing resolution, although I don't know whether he means last week's continuing resolution that carried us into this week, or whether he's referring to the new omnibus spending bill as a CR, which I had thought I guess it could have been referred to that way. We were puzzling over that yesterday. CR notes other factors helped reduce bankruptcies. Of course, the economy is much better than it was when the Affordable Care Act became law, but the CR says bankruptcy attorneys tell them medical cases are rarer and medical debt is much lower in Massachusetts, which had Romney Care before the Affordable Care Act. And I guess this is all coming up. Well, we'll get to that in a minute. One more tweet on that subject. Reducing health bankruptcies was also a major argument for the Affordable Care Act at the time, in particular ending annual and lifetime caps and the pre-existing conditions difficulties. That comes up because in some of the discussions about Trump Care 3.1 and whether it should be 3.1 or 3.2, some of the other changes now being proposed are changes to bankruptcy laws connected to the idea that they ought to let states opt out of pre-existing condition regulations. That is, of course, the protection that those with pre-existing conditions have against being charged exorbitant rates for coming under insurance. Allowing states to opt out of that will likely raise the risk of bankruptcy for a lot of people. Anybody that an insurer can come up with anything at all to hang the pre-existing condition label on. A lot of you have horror stories from your own experience or the experience of those close to you about people, I had a rash once. They said it's a pre-existing condition. They're going to charge me an extra $10,000 a month. That's going to cause a lot of bankruptcies. And apparently they're giving some thought to how to deal with this problem, knowing, in other words, that they're going into this with a bill that will likely cause a lot more medical bankruptcies in the near future. Let's see. Michael Musson has a clarification on the CR. The CR extends funding through the first season of the Trump administration, and season is the way to refer to it, ratings-wise. Extends funding through the first season of the Trump administration. Fate of the second season still uncertain. Yes. I guess my question was whether or not the designation of the bill, whether it made any difference, whether or why people would refer to it in some cases as an omnibus appropriations bill, which it is, and in some cases specifically as a continuing resolution, which it also is. And I guess, well, now that I think about it, I guess the answer is in how the bill is styled, and I guess that'll answer our question. Where can we look for that? Does anybody know what bill number they've attached to it? Have they bothered to do that? Is it written anywhere? I mean, I don't know. I guess they must have had a bill before, and now they have a, okay. All right. Well, let's see. Yeah, here we are. Continuing resolutions. So it's making further continuing appropriations for fiscal year 2017, and for other purposes, it is HJ Res 99, which would make it a continuing resolution, as opposed to a straight up HR, whatever the number would be, an omnibus spending bill. I don't know what's the advantage. I don't know if I can recall offhand if there is any advantage to bringing it up as a resolution versus as a bill. Why not HR 99 or whatever the number would be versus HJ Res 99? Both, a joint resolution has to be passed by both houses of Congress in just the same way that a HR bill would have to be. And in order to have the force of law, they require the signature of the president just the way an HR bill would. And I'm trying to I'm scrambling in my mind to see if I can come up with any procedural reason why a resolution would be preferable, and it's probably pretty simple and pretty obvious and routine to appropriators and staff of appropriators, but I never did do any appropriations work. I wonder why that's the case. Well, maybe that's something I'll be able to look up offline and give you an answer to. If that's an important question in your mind, then you've come to the right place. And if it's not, boy, are you bored. Sorry. We'll try and get back on track with other things that make a little bit more sense and are a little bit closer to the morning's headlines. Let's see. We can catch up with what Politico had this morning in terms of the newest and latest on changes in the health care bill that'll help lay our foundation for a discussion with Joan later on. GOP changing health bill as Trump leans in hard. And boy, is he looking leathery in today's photo illustrating this piece. John Dawsey, John Bresnahan, and Rachel Bade, B-A-D-E, on the byline for Politico. House Republicans worked late into the night, which is hard to believe, but it was Tuesday, on last-minute changes to their Obamacare repeal bill as President Donald Trump began rallying support to muscle the stalled legislation across the finish line. Senior Capitol Hill and White House officials said a new amendment being drafted Tuesday night would address concerns from key moderates about how the legislation treats individuals with pre-existing conditions. Earlier in the day, multiple sources said House leadership floated the idea of adding additional money, that's what Greg told us about, to high-risk pools aimed at subsidizing more expensive premiums for people with such medical conditions. The changes are expected to circulate Wednesday. It was not clear Tuesday night, however, if the amendment would include new funds, though one White House official indicated it would. That is to say, new appropriations, just straight up money from the printer shop, essentially, as opposed to being offset with spending cuts elsewhere. So pretty much everything conservative Republicans said they hated about everything could in fact be included in this, and they might very well just vote for it just to get something done. But that doesn't surprise me. And in fact, that's kind of the way you hope Washington works from time to time. Just not necessarily in service of something so horrible. But anyway, the last-ditch effort comes after GOP leaders faced a major setback in their whip effort Tuesday. Former Energy and Commerce Chairman Fred Upton, mentioned by Greg, who has crafted numerous repeal bills, came out against the bill amid worries about pre-existing conditions protections. And key Trump ally Billy Long of Missouri similarly announced he would oppose the bill, sending leaders scrambling to stop the bleeding. Two high-profile defections, those two, sent shock waves through the House Tuesday. Shock. And insiders realized they could not pass the bill without vital support from influential healthcare wonks like Upton. Oh no, another wonk. Or key Trump allies like Long. This is kind of funny. They couldn't have passed it without smart people like this guy over here and dumb people like this guy over here. GOP leaders can only afford to lose 22 votes and still pass the bill. Boy, this sounds familiar. Is this, did Greg actually read this article already? I mean, there's only so many facts to go around here. But let me, now I'm curious. Was this one of the, I don't think that it was a Politico piece that he went to on this, but now I want to kind of scan no, I guess he went elsewhere. All right. So, like I said, everybody's got the same facts to work with. They're going to come up over and over. GOP leaders can only afford to lose 22 votes and still pass the bill. Already about 20 lawmakers, mostly moderates, concerned about the bill's impact on constituents. As is so often the case with members of Congress, they are, when they're holding out, concerned about the bill's impact on constituents. Of course they are. But all right, it's a throwaway phrase. They publicly said they will vote no. Even more have said they're undecided and have yet to make up their minds, plus, of course, those who think it's none of your business. Trump is now getting personally involved in trying to pass the bill. The president made at least a dozen phone calls. Don't break a sweat there, Don. Seeking support for the bill Tuesday. And Capitol Hill and administration officials said he will host lawmakers, including Upton and Long, at the White House on Wednesday, when they should be voting on the thing. But maybe they are going to delay it until the evening, and he'll give them, I don't know what, finger sandwiches or something. He'll give them all the finger sandwiches this afternoon in hopes that they will change their minds and change their votes. He hasn't been able to change any votes with White House visits so far, but he hasn't tried these guys yet. The White House is hoping changes to the bill will win over many wary moderates, and they're crossing those fingers that they plan to use for the sandwiches later on, that Trump can secure an endorsement from those opponents after his meeting. And if you only need one or two, I guess it's worth trying, even for Donald Trump. Some White House officials want to vote on the bill on Thursday, but bringing the bill to the floor will be up to Speaker Paul Ryan and Majority Leader Kevin McCarthy. Two senior White House officials said they feared members leaving for recess without voting could doom eventual passage, but many in Congress have grown frustrated with the White House's timetables. That's interesting. They just say, we'll do it in 2 weeks just to show you that we set the agenda around here in terms of at least when we vote on things. Changes to the bill are possible in the next 24 hours, two senior officials said, but the changes can't be that significant or we'll lose the support of the Freedom Caucus. One of these officials said it's unclear how the group of 36 conservatives who rejected a previous draft of the legislation will ultimately react to the new proposal, and that's because they don't know what the new proposal is yet. Whether the changes will win over enough moderates for lawmakers to lock in a majority is also unclear. Upton, for example, said on Tuesday that more money for risk pools wouldn't necessarily flip his vote. GOP insiders, however, say Upton has been involved in crafting the new amendments. That's okay. It doesn't mean he'll vote for them. It could just mean that someone else will do the dirty work. Talks of changes to the bill began percolating on Capitol Hill Tuesday afternoon. GOP leaders had previously said the text was finalized, so they really don't know what they're talking about. We're tweaking, floating verbiage and stuff. We're not changing the bill in a major way. There is some discussion to get everybody back together, said Representative Joe Barton, a Texas Republican and Freedom Caucus member. Sometime this summer, we'll put a bill on the president's desk. Well, that doesn't matter. You can put all kinds of bills on this president's desk. He doesn't pay them. Some GOP insiders are not optimistic that the new change will finally enable the House to pass their health care alternative. Even if it does, any bill will still need Senate approval, and senators in that chamber have made it clear that they intend to rewrite the bill completely. So more work ahead will be on Trump care. Well, I guess at that point it becomes 4.0 when the Senate gets a hold of it, if they get a hold of it. And they might not even get a hold of it until mid-May at the very best. I don't know how many times the White House has to lose a vote or lose the opportunity for a vote by changing a bill, hours before it's supposed to come to the floor. But most of the House just really doesn't. I mean, they've dedicated their lives the past couple of years to insisting that they don't work that way. Although I guess I'm surprised every time one of them lives up to it. So I suppose I can't blame the White House for perhaps thinking this will be the time we finally break them of that habit as legislators of trying to read things before voting on them. Joan McCarter, ready to join us today and take over the second half of the show so I can knock off for a nap? It's tiring.
No.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll stay and chat with you then.
Good.
All
it's
right.
much more fun when you're here.
It does seem that way. It's tough to just, talk to yourself out there.
It is. It's
not an easy thing to do.
Although you're very good at it.
Well, thank you. I should run for president. The other guy seems to have a good time with it, but he enjoys an audience as much as anybody. So I wonder if he would do it if he was alone. I don't know. It's a hard call. All right. Well, let's see. I think I'm up to date on what's going on healthcare wise. They're still floating a couple more changes. Sounds like Fred Upton thinks that he can get money added to high risk pools, but that might not necessarily even buy his own vote.
We're calling it the Kalamazoo kickback, apparently.
Oh, good. I like it. I knew there had to be a kickback in there somewhere.
Yeah.
Okay. But Greg reminds us, no way of even predicting how much money should be in such a fund, not just where that money would come from. But the Politico article here seems to indicate that they might even be willing to do it with just flat out new money, no offset. But I think Greg had mentioned perhaps attaching an $8 billion price tag to it, but that nobody had any idea whether that was enough.
Well, they're talking about $8 billion in addition to $130 billion that's already there.
Okay, well that would explain.
This $8 billion would go to the pre-existing condition pools, the high risk pools. Mm-hmm. And here's the funny part, as well as to people, those free riders who decide they don't need insurance until they get sick. So the cost to them in the original bill was very, very, very high for getting back on insurance. This would subsidize them.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now, a lot of those guys, I guess granted, a lot of those people are young Republicans who were holding out for political purposes when it was Obamacare.
Uh-huh.
And now that it will be Trumpcare, they want in.
Afford it.
Now that they'll want in once it's Trumpcare, and it'll cost them a lot of money, but that'll be covered.
Right.
How amazing is that? All you got to do is hold on.
What's important to remember, though, about this whole thing is that this is 10 years of funding. Or is it 5?
Well, I
think it might just be 5, and then it's gone.
It may turn into 5, and it may turn into 2.5 once we start paying for the holdout bros.
But it ends.
Oh.
This isn't a fund that exists in perpetuity to help people get insurance.
It
zeroes out at the end.
That will make for a very interesting scene as the college age holdout bros elbow their way into line to claim funding ahead of infants with congenital heart defects.
Yeah.
Because the kids that have a very difficult time standing in line, they have to stay in incubators, etc. Whereas the bros can bring a keg and wait it out.
Yeah. And talk about cutting Medicaid more.
Right. Well, that's as they used to do around the kegs. Such an exciting time in Paul Ryan's life.
Sociopath.
Wow.
And, everything that was wrong with Trumpcare before is still wrong because they haven't made changes that are positive to the base bill. The base bill still exists. It's still awful. It's still the CBO score of 24 million people minimum being kicked off in 24 years, or in 10 years rather. All these numbers.
Right. And
24 million people losing insurance in 10 years. In the original estimate from the CBO, we are not getting a new estimate from the CBO on either the MacArthur Amendment or this new floating around idea from Upton.
Okay, so...
and remember, MacArthur allows states to decide whether or not insurance companies have to cover pre-existing conditions and essential health benefits.
Right.
So
no score and no likelihood of any score. Certainly not this week.
No likelihood of any score.
Okay. I do recall that used to be frowned upon to vote on bills that you haven't read that have no score, and I don't know how much it's going to cost. And it's all
bills that hadn't been published for 3 days, so that everybody had a chance to look at them. And although, maybe they'll do the 3-day thing. Mick Mulvaney, who has decided apparently he's president, is demanding a Saturday vote. But one Republican, Phil Rowe, is that his name?
Sounds familiar.
Is getting married on Saturday.
Well, we're pro-marriage.
So much for his wedding.
Congratulations to
President Mulvaney gets his Trump care vote on Saturday.
Right. Well, they could probably incorporate, it could be a theme wedding.
There you go.
It's voting.
Bring tongue depressors and,
bring people to the galleries. That's a tough spot. And as you know, this will be a very exciting day for Mr. Rowe. I imagine, unless he's done this before. Has he?
I have no idea.
I have an inkling that maybe this is not his first time, but I'm not certain. But anyway, congratulations. We're glad you found love and a life partner. What better way to celebrate it, really, than dooming 24 million others to their deaths?
Yeah.
Should be part of the service, I think. I read an interesting bit about a little observation about the healthcare bill yesterday on Twitter, because that's where all news happens. I don't pay attention to anything else anymore. It's very hard to. Topher Spiro noting this, as he put it, bombshell from Matt Fiedler. I have to check on who's who here. It was Matt Fiedler, a fellow at the Center for Health Policy at the Brookings Institution. Mm-hmm. Did you happen to see this one? Noting that the amendment, and I guess here the MacArthur Amendment, would gut catastrophic protections for people with employer-provided coverage nationwide. The theory here being that large employers that I guess have multi-state operations and could theoretically claim their base of operations anywhere would be motivated to perhaps declare themselves a corporation based in the state with the least restrictive rules with respect to pre-existing conditions, and then tell all their employees nationwide, you're all being insured in Texas or, wherever else. And that plenty of people who thought they had nothing whatsoever to do with Obamacare or Trump care or anything like it now find in their pay envelope a little note from HR that says, hope you're enjoying yourself here in New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, wherever you may be. You're now an employee of this company in Texas for health insurance purposes, and you're all losing your insurance. And those of you who hadn't jumped on the insurance yet are going to find it awfully difficult because you are going to be considered a Texan for the purposes of pre-existing conditions. That should be fun.
Yep.
I imagine they'll try and tinker with that at some point, too, if it gets enough play, or if enough people call their members of Congress and tell them straight up what's going to happen to them if they vote for this thing.
They need to. Those calls need to keep happening. Now, note that the selling across state lines is, you remember when we were talking about doing this in phases?
Yes.
That's phase 2. Or maybe it was phase 3. I don't remember.
It was another phase.
That hasn't happened yet. That's something that they want to do. But yes, that's the likely outcome if that does indeed happen.
Yeah, that's noted. I think that's actually the very next thing that Fiedler says here is the same outcome would be likely for all private insurance policies if they're allowed to sell across state lines, as the administration has suggested they would enact later.
And what's really important to know as well is that all of the changes that they're talking about in terms of essential health benefits, everything else applies to all insurance policies. Getting rid of Obamacare, repealing Obamacare as they are doing, and putting in place Trump Care still affects people on employers' insurance. It's not just Medicaid people. It's not just people buying Obamacare plans. It's everybody.
Yeah, and I think they're counting on that not being widely known. And I would imagine that a lot of...
Yeah.
Yeah, certainly people who are supporting the repeal and replace thing with the sort of sly smile on their face saying, well, we're doing this to them anyway. I've got Real America insurance. I bought it myself, half paid for by my employer, and not at all subsidized by the federal government. And so we're sticking it to you, and then, of course, they'll watch their own insurance fall apart, for which they'll no doubt blame, if not Obama, then perhaps Hillary Clinton or Andrew Jackson, maybe.
Well, the Trump voters will.
Yes.
They'll blame somebody else. Everybody else is going to blame Trump.
Wow,
and
that's
Republicans. Crazy. We've seen enough polling in the last few months on that to know that people are going to hold Republicans responsible when they lose their health insurance.
Well, that's a radical notion. The people who did it to you.
Yeah.
So thought.
The good news is Republicans own whatever they do. The bad news is they're going to do it.
That's true. You have to do it first.
Getting Upton and Long really does increase the chances of this passing.
Yes.
Of Ryan being able to actually shove this through by Saturday. Or on Saturday, as Mick Mulvaney would like. Maybe Mulvaney just hates Phil Rowe.
Maybe. Or his wife. Or I don't know who
it's going to die
actually.
In the Senate. It's not going to fly in the Senate.
Okay. Yes, in all likelihood that will change.
Something with some of these ideas might.
True.
So we still need to kill this in the House if we can. So, folks, keep calling. Particularly call if you have a Republican representative from New York or California. Because they're carved out extra special in this whole plan. And it's something that's not gotten enough attention, I don't think. This starts from original Trump Care. It prevents any tax credits for health insurance going to plans that cover abortion.
All right. Yes.
This is all plans, not just Obamacare, because it doesn't, we had that fight. This is any insurance plan that covers abortion. Tax credits cannot go to those plans, to people who have those plans. But in New York and California, there are state laws that say all plans have to cover abortion services. Which means nobody gets a tax credit in New York or California to help them purchase health insurance.
Republicans will love that. Of course, that's a backhanded targeting of the biggest blue states.
The Republicans, there are Republican districts in both of these states.
Yes, but Trump will pardon them. Maybe that's what he was. You can go ahead and take that deduction, and they'll never even audit you because they're too busy auditing me. But if they do audit you, I'll give you a pardon.
Well, they'll never audit you because we're going to get the IRS staff and there won't be any auditors left.
Yes. So I say go ahead and claim the deduction regardless. I am not a tax advisor or tax attorney, and if you get in trouble, I won't help you. In fact, I will probably have hurt you just by saying this. But yeah, this is a targeted tax increase against taxpayers in New York and California, rooted through abortion protests.
Yes.
Okay.
Which makes it just perfect, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm. Very interesting that will, of course, and also just interesting the way small government Republicans will reach into your pockets via state law in these two cases, but and claim that you lose your tax deduction. We're going to raise taxes if you disagree, and you don't even have to disagree with us about abortion. It's just if you buy your insurance from an insurer who had a cheap or otherwise attractive plan, who also happens to cover abortion services, but you have either no interest in it or have never had to avail yourself of it, and, maybe you think you never will, or whatever, whether you planning on it or not, and I guess it's a rather foolish thing to try to plan your life around, but okay, go ahead, go for it, or whatever your situation is, whether you have any interest in it or not, you're going to end up losing your tax deduction. Your taxes will go up because Republicans don't like abortion.
Yep.
And
okay, so that's the fact for New York and California. But look at the flip side of this. For all of the other states, health insurers are going to stop covering abortion services.
Or at the very least will feel compelled to advertise that they offer abortion-free programs so that you can still get your tax cut, tax deduction for your health care insurance. Yeah, all right.
No, they'll just stop offering plans that cover it.
I guess that's possible. I mean, I don't know how people would people be in a position to continue to insist. I don't think very many consumers, even though they would have an interest in it, would even know how to begin demanding that it remain on there. And
think back to pre-Obamacare. How did your demands that your insurance cover something work?
That is the answer.
Yeah.
Imagine if that were to happen. Okay, how about we just check history for that?
Yeah.
Think about how angry Andrew Jackson was about his insurance. You never know.
He was very angry.
Yes, he was
he
furious.
Saw this coming, and he was very angry.
He did, and he's a visionary, and that's why he's on our $20 bill. Although I was saying yesterday, if you were an outsider observing American culture, you would think we venerated Andrew Jackson. Why?
You would, because we have.
Yeah. Well, I mean, even more than we do. It's a mystery, really, what he's doing on the $20 bill at this stage. I imagine. Do you know when that started? I don't have any idea when they began using him on the $20 bill, but I'm sure nobody said anything in particular at the time. But
yeah, I think it's been long enough that nobody really thought about who Andrew Jackson really was and what he really did.
I mean, it's a weird thing to be putting him on Federal Reserve notes at all, to be honest. But he seems like an odd choice. But I mean, I'm sure at the time people were like, "Well, I don't know. What do you want to? You want to use Polk or Fillmore or I don't know, Taylor,
Harding?"
Yeah. Right. And
all those ones that were Rutherford B. Hayes, the ones that we don't know.
Right.
Did anything?
I don't know, Jackson. He's got an interesting portrait. He had a duel. People think
he had that hair.
Right. Yeah, wacky hair. Blanket around his shoulders or whatever that is. He was a character, certainly, and people, I'm sure, had fond memories of their great-grandparents telling them about the time that he served them whiskey on the White House lawn, and that was enough.
Since you asked, I looked. He has been on the front of the $20 bill since 1928.
All right. So that's like not forever, but it's a living memory for most people. 1928. When it was
and he should be off. Is this still happening? Is he still being replaced?
I don't know. That's a good question. Wasn't one of the...
It's supposed to be Harriet Tubman.
Were they going to do that to the $10 bill as a compromise somehow? I can't remember what they...
Oh, right.
That's amazing that we had such defenders of Jackson. And, I mean...
Yeah, it's going to be Tubman on the front and Jackson on the reverse. It was going to be Hamilton, but people... No, they were going to replace Hamilton.
Oh, but then the musical
bill.
Happened.
Yeah, I should remember all of this better, but I'm looking at Wikipedia.
How many things can we recall, really? I mean, look what's happening in the world. But my recollection was that people loved the musical, so they didn't do it.
That was it.
Yeah.
Yeah, they had to keep Hamilton on because of Hamilton.
Yes, which is why I'm investing in Tubman, the musical.
So a year ago,
yes.
Lou, who was then Jack Lou, who was Treasury Secretary, said that Hamilton's going to stay on the 10. Jackson would be replaced by Tubman on the front of the $20 bill, and Jackson will be on the back side.
Mm-hmm.
But
how How can you even tell what's the backside if it's...
Yeah.
Well, I suppose you could make
It's
the design in a certain
supposed
way.
to happen in the next decade, I guess.
Okay. Well, Andrew Jackson knew that was happening, and he wasn't angry about it. He was good with it. That's what I read. Yes.
Okay, we'll go with that.
He had a big heart. I know this because the president who made up Civil War history on the golf course says it's true.
Oh, Lord.
I don't know. Yeah, did you I don't know if you caught that story. But
I saw the golf course thing.
Yes, it's now making a second go around. That should give you a sense of where he is in his historical interpretation. Let's see. So current events. Back to current events. I see that James Comey is back on the Hill and testifying as we speak with the Senate Judiciary Committee. Is that right? Yes.
Yes.
The FBI oversight hearing, is that sort of a routine FBI annual oversight hearing, or is this something special?
I think
I'm sure they'll ask
as a judiciary and as a Grassley, it's going to be just a routine.
Okay.
Grassley's not going to be out there pushing for real.
Right. But then there'll be Democrats asking questions, and they may perhaps
Yes, in fact, we've got some good Democrats on judiciary.
Excellent. And they'll ask some good questions. Pat Leahy will, of course, yield all of his time to Republicans so that they get a chance to ask two questions. Not really.
Not really, no.
But I'm sure the
look for White House to be particularly helpful. He's good.
Yes.
White House is the guy you want asking all of the questions in every hearing.
He is particularly good at this. And I guess it's just sort of general FBI oversight. I guess they could range anything from Republicans will likely stick to, what do you want your budget to be and why, standard questions, which would normally be the same questions Democrats are asking, but for the fact that, I don't know, we were taken over by Russia
president's
or something.
A traitor? Yeah.
But minus that. Other than that, they could probably get to the budget questions too. We'll leave those to the Republicans, and Democrats will ask different questions. I don't think they'll get to the question of the new report by CBS News that Trump apparently was directly involved in the post-inauguration hunt for the rogue National Park Service tweeter who dared to show that his inauguration was sparsely attended. But that's not really a DOJ issue or FBI issue. Unless, of course, it rises to the level of why is the president, doing this and or violating various federal laws against his political activity. But I don't know. That seems like maybe a little bit far afield for today's hearing. But I wanted to put that on the record that's now actually out there, that CBS News has obtained emails from inside the Park Service of top brass discussing this and saying, well, you better get a response out to him because the president himself is on the phone looking to find out who did this. We all suspected that was the case, but now confirmed. Just want to throw that out there for you.
Yep.
Let's see. What else?
Well, bad news has just come in.
Oh? Uh-oh.
Via the Twitter machine. Iowa now no longer has an insurer selling individual health policies. Medica, the last insurer selling individual health policies in most of Iowa, is probably about to leave. Iowa's an interesting case. It was David Anderson, who writes at Balloon Juice, wrote about this. It wasn't something I knew about until a few months ago. There's one individual market patient in Iowa, one person buying one individual plan in Iowa who costs $1 million a month.
Wow. What? Okay, that would catch my eye. How do you?
Yes. So Iowa has had a really unique problem.
Yes. Who is this guy?
Well, that, of course, we don't know and we can't know, and there are very good reasons why we don't. But it shows the importance of insurance and everybody paying in and everybody covering everybody.
Yeah.
but also just how crazy doing health insurance the way we do it is. This one person pretty much upends the whole state.
Yeah.
Because it's going to bankrupt the one insurer who might be Medica, trying to cover just this one person if they can't get enough other people to buy in. And apparently they haven't been able to do that, and there hasn't been enough cost sharing. And it's all just so stupid.
Yeah, where's this, where were you reading this?
The Des Moines Register.
Okay. We'll have to see if we can dig that up and share that with people. Oh, I see Sarah Cliff is, I guess, discussing that right now. Okay. We'll grab her tweet about it and the links involved.
Okay, so she says this would be huge. Leave 94 of Iowa's 99 counties with no Obamacare insurer. One of the problems that we're talking about here is something Marco Rubio did. Remember when he got rid of or limited the funding going to what was sort of reinsurance? I'm trying to think of what there was, the risk reduction pool that insurance companies were paying into. Those insurers who were making profits, who had figured this out and knew pretty much how they would be doing bringing in new Obamacare patients. When they had profits, they put them into this pool so that insurers that ended up taking on more of the sick people and more of the costs and were losing money could be reimbursed.
Yes.
What did they call that thing? Why can't I remember?
Good question.
It's one of those word-finding days for me.
Yeah, at the time it was a term of art but we all knew it. And, I don't know. That's a good, a lot of terms come to mind, but I'm not certain that any of them are the actual ones.
Yeah, and I'm just Googling it now. Risk corridors.
Okay.
Risk corridors.
That's right. So, that doesn't have anything. It doesn't sound like a corridor of any sort. But okay.
High risk pools, risk corridors. There's just too many things to keep in one's head. Anyway, Marco Rubio ended up sort of upending the risk corridor program, and that's part of the problem here. There isn't that help for insurance companies who end up having to cover somebody who costs $1 million a month.
Yeah. Who knew that? Well, okay, everybody. But other than that, who could have guessed that taking away the mechanism through which they would prepare for the most outlandish eventuality would end up resulting in a most outlandish eventuality not being paid for?
And by the way, that was Marco Rubio wanting to be president.
Yeah, and that did not work out either, as I recall.
Yeah, that didn't work out either.
So, well, you know, he was trying. Yeah, what was his, what was the reason for that? Just, I hate socialism, or was there...
I hate Obamacare. This is what I can do.
I guess that was
and remember, they were calling it a slush fund?
Mm-hmm.
Back then it was the insurance company bailout.
Yes, and they still use that.
Slush fund.
Huh. Yeah, I do recall that was bandied about, and the president still uses that terminology and still insists that somehow that Democratic objections to his Trump Care bill are supposedly somehow a bailout for insurance companies.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know why or on what basis he says that, but, you know, again, right. Andrew Jackson, fake Civil War battle. I had the biggest inauguration ever. And this is true. Plus, we should shut the government down, which is a new one for the president.
Lord.
Yeah.
That's because he's listening to his new president, Mick Mulvaney.
This week's president. These guys, yeah, I guess another one of those situations where whoever's the last one out of the room, or whoever can lock themselves into the Oval Office with him for long enough becomes president for the week. I wonder if they have a raffle there in the White House, like president for a week.
Who gets to meet with him?
Yeah, right. Or
who gets to be president this week?
Right. Like, in my kid's elementary school, you could get your name is picked out of a hat. You get to be the gym teacher for the day. These guys do the same thing.
Seriously?
With the presidency. Yeah. Why, you want to go back to elementary school?
No, that sounds horrible.
You think? I don't
What
know.
if you get a bad kid doing it who wants to play dodgeball?
Oh, well, I think it's within certain parameters. Essentially, you get to blow the whistle is pretty much, we're going to be playing volleyball. You blow the whistle because you're the gym teacher.
Okay, they don't get to decide.
I assume that they could.
They're not going to make the fat kids climb the rope.
Oh, no. Well, no, I hope not. I'm sure there are some cruel gym teachers out there. Ours seem to be pretty good. And I think, they probably hand them a list and say, choose the activity from among these 5 things.
Okay, that makes me feel better.
Right.
I still have nightmares.
You had a rough time in gym?
Right.
Oh, my goodness.
Being forced to climb the rope. Did you ever have to climb a rope in gym class in grade school?
We had those ropes, and everyone was wondering what the hell are these ropes for, because they spent the time tied up in the rafters. They had stopped making anybody climb the ropes, I guess, several years beforehand. I'm sure it was great strength training and all, but, not everybody is up to that in the middle of their elementary or middle school morning, let's say, or ever, for that matter.
In front of all of their classmates, it was torture.
Yeah. And it's no small thing, and it's the sort of thing you can run out of stamina on way up high, too.
I lived in the boondocks of Idaho. Of course they were still doing that when I was in grade school.
Okay. Well, I am sorry to hear that. I don't think that they allow them to do that. They just have a couple of choices, and
Mick Mulvaney would have made kids climb the rope
on Saturday.
Yes,
that's the worst part. During their wedding, as well. That's weird.
As we speak, in fact, and Mulvaney's probably in the meeting. We've got Fred Upton, Billy Long, and from the committees, Burgess and Walden, meeting with our friend Donald Trump to talk over this, to make it happen.
Okay. They're going to make it work.
They're going to make it work.
All right.
It is close to happening this time, I think. So, in all seriousness, keep those calls flowing. Let's just tie up the House switchboard and make life miserable for those people.
Well, that's
particularly Daryl Issa.
Sure. Who thinks it's none of your business anyway?
It's none of your business.
You can just call and complain about that, regardless of what your position on
You should call and complain about that if you were one of Daryl Issa's constituents.
Right, or if he stole your
car.
Because
it is absolutely your business what he's going to do on this vote.
Yeah. I mean, it's the one answer you're not really allowed to give about this.
Not ever. Not ever.
But he went ahead and did it. By the way, I found some, maybe I'll include in the roundup some nice diaries at Daily Kos at the time on how Marco Rubio broke Obamacare through the risk corridors. And, and this one is actually pretty recent, so that ought to be interesting too, but we'll see if we can find some from back in the day as well.
I do remember writing them.
Yes. Okay.
I don't remember writing a lot of stuff. I mean, sometimes I'll go look and see I wrote that last week, but those I remember writing because of course, I always remember Marco Rubio because Marco Rubio was horrible.
Yes. And he still is. And we thought we were done with him for a while, but he came back. He decided he should come back to the Senate that he hates to continue doing work he can't stand and ruin your life.
They still make him be president of the Senate, which makes me happy. Every time I turn on C-SPAN 2 and Rubio is sitting in the chair, it makes me happy.
Maybe it's something he enjoys. Tom Coburn used to like to do his crossword puzzles there. Marco might, I don't know what. I guess as much water as he could drink. It's all free. That might be what he's there for.
That must be it.
Well, okay. Let's see. I don't know what else is happening congressionally.
I don't know what else is happening except that I believe soon, I don't know if it's today or tomorrow, we're going to have the vote on the the continuing resolution that takes us through September when we might have a Trump-inspired government shutdown.
Yes.
No
wants
government
to hold
shutdown this
hostages.
week, and darn it, didn't Democrats pretty much win on that one?
Yeah. I ran through the contents of the spending bill yesterday, and it looks for all the world like there's none of what Trump wants in it, and quite a bit of what Democrats would have been agitating for, and really not much even in the way of budget slashing. A few in there that kind of hurt, but.
Well, Acorn. Acorn still is not getting any funding.
So back to zero for Acorn.
Yeah.
Which is fine. Even the Acorn
actually
employees are used to
still in there. They're still doing that.
It's actually printed on the form that they use for filling out the budget. And when they run out of them, they won't print any more new ones probably. But it's good that they're in there. And there's probably people putting out press releases at home saying, I defunded Acorn again. They don't say again, but maybe they do.
Maybe they do.
I don't know. Well, that's very interesting. And, I guess it's no weirder than we're still not using federal money for abortions. Just wanted to keep you up to date on that.
I guess not.
Now, in addition to the spending plan, and do you have any recollection? I was trying to remember what procedurally, like, for instance, why go with a joint resolution for a spending bill rather than if you're going to do an omnibus for the rest of the year, 5 months. Why not use just a straight up bill for that? But I don't know. If you don't know off the top of your head, I can't remember either.
I don't know off the top of my. They'll probably blame the Senate.
Yeah, and that may very well be at the heart of what it is. I just don't recall. I have a note here. I'll check it offline. But I thought if perhaps you remembered, we would just pick your brain on it. So in addition to all of this and the spending bill and the changes to health care, any word on when they think, because last week they were saying we're going to do all of these things. We're going to have the tax bill in there too. And
oh, yeah, the tax bill, no.
No, okay.
Nobody's talking about the tax bill this week. But here's another thing to keep in mind with Obamacare repeal and zombie Trump care. It's all about the tax cuts. This is not a health care bill. This is not a health policy bill. This is a tax policy bill.
Well,
so
that's true.
Keep that in mind.
I mean, there's nothing in it. I mean, even the biggest Trump care fan in the world can't point, and without lying, point to it and say, this expands people's rights under healthcare, this expands people's access to healthcare, this expands coverage in any way. Except, in the vague sense that, well, I think this will lower premiums and therefore freedom. But other than that, like, for instance, as opposed to Obamacare itself, which said, well, this actually is huge for people with pre-existing conditions. It covers things that were just not being covered before and saves a lot of lives and gets insurance for people who couldn't get it. Even the diehard fans can't point to anything that say more people will be insured because of this. And that's because millions less will be insured.
This does nothing to help people.
Yeah.
Except for people who want bigger tax cuts.
Yes, or who are insurance CEOs, I guess.
Well, them too.
Right. And they'll get a tax cut on top of it. They'll make more money and they'll pay less taxes on it to boot. So they're thrilled. Okay, but that's a good framing, a good framework for that. And we don't know how much less taxes they'll pay ultimately because we don't have a tax plan on top of this thing. Well, we have the cocktail napkin thing that amazingly says that there will be 3 rates and what the rates are, but not who pays those rates.
Right.
That's pretty incredible.
No, it's not.
All right.
I mean, it would be, but it's 2017, so it's not anymore.
Right. Yeah, it's hard to say things without qualifying it that way. Let's see. I don't know what else we can shoehorn in there.
Speaking of 2017,
Yes?
this just struck me. Did you see that on, I don't know whether it was Fox and Friends or The Five, somewhere on Fox News, they had Joe Namath on to talk about North Korea?
I don't know how to react to that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Joe
It's,
Namath.
it's peak 2017, I think.
I guess. Wow. I mean, was he wearing a fur coat or just regular?
Pantyhose.
Sure. And hey, this was a serious reason that he did that. Come on.
Am I the only person old enough to remember that?
Maybe, but
Joe Namath was doing the pantyhose ad.
Yeah. Well, do you
remember that at all?
Yeah. I don't remember the ad, but I remember that he wore them. I mean, it wasn't the idea that he actually was like keeping warm and cold game days under the uniform with them, and it made a certain amount of sense, and only Joe Namath felt comfortable admitting something like that. I think. It was my recollection of it, but then I was, how old was I in Joe Namath's heyday?
It was 1973.
Well, that wasn't even his heyday. He was still alive. But
he was still alive.
but that was about it. No, okay.
Beauty Mist pantyhose. He said, now I don't wear pantyhose, but if Beauty Mist can make my legs look good, imagine what they could do for yours.
Right. Maybe I'm imagining the whole thing. Or somebody else maybe wore them, but because he's claiming he doesn't wear them. I don't know. We got to have a congressional investigation about this.
Anyway, he was talking
Korea.
about North Korea on Fox News.
Right. That makes sense.
Total sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And it helps with the way they march, maybe having pantyhose that, allow you a freedom of movement. It's not something you can do in Spanx, maybe, but pantyhose, yes. I don't know. Not that I wear any, but I'm thinking about it this afternoon. So, Joan, thanks for coming by.
You're welcome.
You've
I'm glad
inspired
I
me.
could leave you with a laugh.
Yeah, you've inspired me to go get some pantyhose, I guess, and then maybe I can get a spot on Fox News as well.
You can go talk about, I don't know, Iran.
Sure, why not? Their axis of evil, right?
Right.
Yeah, David Frum. Okay, so we know about this. No one's asking David Frum about North Korea these days. That is interesting. The forgotten, what would you call one individual member of an axis? I don't know. I'll ask him. He's the wordsmith. I'll ask him. What's North Korea without the other two? Okay, we'll find out. Thank you, Joan, for bringing that special
You are
news.
most welcome.
And, we'll catch up next week. I believe next week, Greg tells me the House is in recess next week.
Yes, it is.
The Senate will be in. I guess it'll be fun to peek in on them and say, what do you guys who normally do nothing do when the other guys are off? And we'll find out.
Probably more appointments if Trump has made any.
Yeah, well, we'll have to check the hopper and see whether there are any. And I guess if they stay until Saturday and the House hands them something, it'll make for an exciting week in the Senate.
That'll be interesting.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll check in with you again. Thank you very much for coming by today.
You are most welcome.
See you next Wednesday. Take care. Joan McCarter, our senior political writer, back to the task of writing senior political things for the rest of the day. I think we're just about out of time because the music's playing, and since I pressed the buttons that make the music play, I think I was well aware of that. Don't let me hide that from you. What's coming up next on the after show? Well, I'll tell you. A coalition of environmental, public interest, outdoor, and civil rights groups calls for monumental Mondays, like Moral Mondays, but for monuments, to defend national monuments from Trump. Conservationists sue to halt fracking operations in Ohio's only national forest, appropriate. And Trump's ignorance of history puts our very existence as a free and democratic government in peril. I hope I haven't loaded too much in the way of expectations onto the guys in the after show. Wow, they did it to themselves. They're next.
From Daily Kos Radio on netrootsradio.com. You have been listening to the Kagro in the Morning Show
with David Waldman.
Thank you very much for listening. And again, do stay tuned for the after show. The last half of today's program, they'll be visiting with Angela Marr, a.k.a. Angie in Washington State, on Twitter. All of that, plus the Connect, Unite, Act Daily Kos Community Calendar is more important than ever these days. All of that on the after show with Wink and Justice next.